right. So, hello, Holistic Heroes. We are here for another episode of Life with Lily, and we are with Gabby Morales. Awesome. Thank you. I'm not gonna lie, I practiced before hitting record. I am big on that. And we are talking about culture and family and heritage and how it affects our spiritual journey, like how our roots and our background actually come into it. Because we're being honest, it's not a clean slate. Like no one's walking in with a clean slate. We all have baggage and roots. So, can you please introduce yourself to our lovely followers and why you are fantastic?
Sure. My name is Gabby Morales, like Lily said. I'm a soul healer and I work with people who really want to tap into their intuition and lead soulful led lives.
I love it. And you are from Nicaragua.
I was born in Nicaragua, yes.
There we go. Awesome. I never know how to word things. Thank you so much for your patience. Um, and that brings us into a very big part of we all have very different paths that help us with our spirituality. So how has your culture and family, how has that affected your spirituality and your spiritual path?
Oh, in so many ways. My family is Catholic, very, very devout Catholic. I have priests and nuns in my family. And that is not the way that I went
Mhm.
at all, at all. And so I really questioned a lot of things from the very beginning. And it wasn't super well received, as I'm sure other people from a Catholic background might understand. And I just dove into really finding what was true for me. Because even though a lot of what I learned growing up about the church and what the church teaches, and I deeply did not align with it, I still had a sense of God or source, whatever you want to call it. And I always felt very much connected to that. And I never had, while I had issues with the dogma of the church, I very much felt safe and at ease with Jesus,
Mhm.
And so while I didn't grow up myself, even though my family around me and everyone was, I didn't grow into a spiritual practice that involved Jesus. I see him more as like my buddy, like a friend, I deeply resonate with the idea of him being an ascended master and not so much as my savior, if
I
that makes
love
sense.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
and it's that goes a lot to depending upon the culture that you grew up with. Savior and martyrdom are huge parts of a lot of cultures. I was raised Catholic also, and I feel like anyone who's raised in a structured religion, you get to a point usually in your teens or 20s where you get to decide if it's your flavor or not and what you want to take with you based on that. And for me, a big thing I took with me was we went to like Catholic mass and stuff,
Mhm.
and I loved the ritual of it. I loved the ritual, the routine of it. You went every week. You did everything was very structured. And for me, it's not like, oh, it's blind obedience. It's like, okay, now I know what to expect because I have ADHD. So if it's like there are so many alternative religions, paganism, spirituality that are like, it's just free flowing, go with the flow. And I'm like, I would like some steps, please, or else I'm gonna wander and not get the most out of it. So I actually realized that I really like ritual in my spirituality because of that. I also like mantras, affirmations because my family, I don't know if you did this in your family, but like the rosary was prayed on a regular basis. And it's a thing that you say. And I realized like I love having things that you just say, affirmations that you just say, prayers that you say that you actually know. Like we were another thing that was, and I get that this isn't all Catholicism, this isn't all organized religion, but my family really believed in looking at the meaning behind things. We never just said it. We sat down and we discussed, like, this is what the Hail Mary means. This is what this means. And so it was getting the true meaning behind things instead of just like blindly saying something. And it's like, well, you say this because it's like happy birthday. It's just something you recite on a certain day. No, it was so much more. So I loved that I got that from it. And I was like you, I questioned to the point where the priests had a problem with me.
Right.
I was unaware that like you couldn't, I would raise my hand in the middle of mass and announce, I have a question. And I was told, repeat, you can't do that. You can't. And I'm like, but he just said something that contradicts. And I would like to have some clarity. And I was told, you can't ask questions. And I'm like, ooh. So even as a child, that rubbed me the wrong way. Anything that's like, you can't ask questions. I'm like, why? What are you hiding? And I think the biggest thing for me, I don't know what your moment was to like pull away. When I was a child, I asked a priest, why can't women be priests? And this is what this human said to me, because men are closer to God.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow.
so women cannot be priests and have that because they are not close enough to God. And I was a child when I asked that question. I think I was like 7. Yeah, started pulling away then, like still went, still did all the activities. We were a very church family, but I don't think I could respect anything that says I'm not as close to divinity as somebody else. Like, who made that choice? Where was that meeting? Why wasn't I invited? I'd like a vote.
Even Jesus came out of a vagina. So I can
Yes.
never mind. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, no. For me, I don't think there was any one point. I was a child that was very much aware of the energy around me. I didn't have the vocabulary back then of, I couldn't have told you at 6 years old that I was reading energy. But that is very much what I was doing. And I don't think I ever really bought into it. It never felt true to me. A lot of what, like I said, like if I just sat with the teachings of Jesus, I could dig that. But also as a very observant child, I could see that very clearly that what was being taught was not what was being applied. There was a big, big chasm between that and the behaviors of people. And, um, I don't think I ever really bought into the church itself. There was never a time. In fact, I do remember being very young and like it would start like Friday afternoon where I would just start fighting my parents. I don't want to go to church. I don't want to go to church. It just energetically felt awful for me to sit in church, even if it was an hour and a half a week. I'm like, get me out of here, you know. But
Yeah.
again, I had no issue with Jesus, but it was like the church itself. I'm like, I don't buy any of this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think, with spirituality, you can have structure with it, but you're so much more open-minded, I think, than with actual like structured traditional religion. For me, I know one of the things, and I don't know if this is similar with you or not. So I'm Irish. I have Irish heritage. But I was like born in the US. But so when I branched out, one of the things I branched into was like Celtic paganism, was stuff from my heritage. And that really resonated with me to go to like lean into my ancestors and what they believed. And that felt so much better than what was mainstream. But also like I'm gonna hurt a bunch of people's feelings. Why the hell is someone's else's heritage more important than my own? And what I mean by that is so many people, they're like, no, I want, like, I resonate with Native American. You are a slice of Wonder Bread. You are not, you are cherry picking where there are no cherries. Like, I believe that there is so much more strength in leaning into your own ancestors and your own heritage instead of trying to grasp from somebody else's. And I know that's very controversial because people are saying, well, do whatever feels right to you. And I'm like, yeah, but if it's not yours, stop picking it up and playing with it. And so realizing that like Celtic paganism is where it's at for me. It's the traditions that I follow, it's the holidays that I follow. And I like it so much better. Has heritage played a role in your spirituality?
Yes and no, and it's a little tricky, and I think that many Hispanics or Latinos would, that are on this path relate a little bit, and it's the fact that we're so mixed. Like what is it? Because we have a couple of generations that are Catholic, but that was also imposed on us. And so not only was that imposed, and do we have the Native American traditions, so it becomes like a mishmash of things. But then if we go back a little bit, at least for me, because I'm pretty split, I have from my dad's side, it's mostly Spanish, even though we're from Nicaragua, but my mom's side is mostly English. And what came forward to me really strongly, even as a kid, I was living in Nicaragua until I was about 4. But I was in Nicaragua telling my mom about the stone circles all over Europe. And because those are things that I had memories of. And I would tell her about fairies. And in Nicaragua, that doesn't exist. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So it's so, for people like me that have so much mixed in, it's been for me at least, it's been a process of pulling back the layers and what do I really connect with, because I could go in and say that I have Mayan and Aztec ancestries and start practicing those shamanic rituals or those shamanic practices. But the truth is that that's not really what came forward for me first.
Yeah.
And so what did was a lot of the European pagan memories that just came online, like, and like I said, I never really accepted the church, but that was what generations of my family had adopted. So it's a little tricky when you say heritage and there's so much mixed in, and but I do agree. I hear what you're saying about picking and choosing. It's not like I'm going to say all of a sudden, okay, well, I'm going to practice Korean shamanism because it's super interesting, which it is, by the way. But I don't have any of that. I'm not going to pick up like some African practices. I do respect that, but I feel like I have a lot to choose from that I can call my heritage. And I can see how a lot of people would fit into those categories where there's just a lot and a lot of seemingly opposing traditions, you know.
Yes. And it's how do they work in harmony? Because they can absolutely work in harmony. And it's almost like a melting pot for a lot of people. And I think you bring up a really good point about colonization with our heritage and our family and our culture, that how has that changed things? Because as much as we're like, oh, it's so normal for us to be like, well, Latinos, they speak Spanish. And it's like, well, why? Because they were colonized to speak Spanish. And people are always like, oh my gosh, they are so religious, they are so Catholic. Why? Because it was shoved up the tuchus enough that it became a very real part of them and a culture. And it's something that you can't ignore. Like, it's one of those layers that everyone's like, that everyone either wants to gloss over, or they just, well, that's normal. It's normal for Latinos to be Catholic. And it's like, yeah, but what else? Because like you said, there's so much more to you. There's so much more in the melting pot for so many people. Most people aren't, let's be honest, this slice of Wonder Bread, where you can tell it's all European. And it's like, so that's what I got. I got European, and that's where it's at. That the little area is all I got, which is fine. I love it. I rock out my heritage just fine. But most people are more like you, where it's like, okay, well, I was raised one thing, but this is my heritage, but this is the colonized version of my heritage, but this is what I'm drawn to, but this. And so it's like, it's this beautiful complexity, and everyone's journey and purpose is to figure out how to make that work in harmony for them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And, the piece I'm about to bring in, I realize that it's very tricky. And it goes against, even though I spend a lot of time learning about decolonization and learning about the ways that colonization has affected my family, my people, all of us, really. I don't think anyone in this world has not been affected by colonization in one way or the other. And at the same time, I deeply believe, because I've experienced past lives, and there are lives that we have had that are very much energetically present and playing out in this current life, that we might not have a human lineage attached to. So I did mention like the Korean shamanism. It's because I am interested in it. It's nothing near what I practice, but they're very interesting. But I accept that there are people that are not part of a certain heritage, and that they approach or adopt a practice that is outside of that heritage.
Yes.
For me, the big difference is the integrity that they approach it with. I think that most of us are familiar with people totally appropriating and adopting something and then teaching it without really embodying it, and without really having the respect and the actual lived experience of what it is that they're now turning around and selling. I get that, and that is a problem. But I feel like that is a problem even if it's your own heritage. It's because if you're not embodying something, truly embodying it, my belief is that you have no business teaching other people about it. And so I do think it is possible for people from outside of a certain heritage to adopt that, if and when it's truly done with integrity and an open heart, and they've done the work to really bring it in to themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's appropriation versus appreciation. Because how many people have appropriated just to make a profit? How many people have appropriated just because it was a fad? And
Right.
they're like, no, but I really feel this like in my soul. And I'm like, you felt it because it was on Pinterest. That's what you felt. And so like as you say, it's like it's integrity. I view it as like commitment. Like if you got commitment, great. Like people, one of the things that I want to be clear, I do not do, this is not my thing, but I did research it when I was younger because I was very curious about it, just because I was an inquisitive kid. Spirit animals, and that being a Native American, I'm so sorry, I do not remember the specific tribe thing, but I do remember what the ritual was to get one. It's not seeing a dinosaur on the TV and going, that is my spirit. No, it is like a 3-day process that ends with a bone through your shoulder and a string. Like it's a thing. And if you want to do, if you want to find your spirit animal, so you want to do that, you want to spend 3 days and a bone shoved in string, do it. Do it. I will honor that path for you. Rock it out, girlfriend. But if you just want to see something on TV and be like, oh, this is my spirit, I'm like, to me, there's the difference. It's like, if you're going to do it, you have to commit to it. Like, you can't just say something and be like, but it resonates with me. It's like, but that's not actually what's happening. So it's for me, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
And you're right. And it's, things were so different through all of heritage. And I feel like that's like a family thing. Depending upon your family origin and how you were raised, will change how you see, like, Catholics are raised all different ways. Pagans are raised all different ways. That, some believe in head coverings. I obviously do. Some believe in, blowing cinnamon at every new moon, and that's awesome. And
That's
but
new for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's there are so many different things, and the importance and how we do them changes based on our experience with them. So, like, the commitment, absolutely. um what demographics besides family and culture have contributed to your spiritual experience?
What do you mean by that?
So for me, being queer is a
Mm,
demographic that has definitely affected my spiritual experience. Another one is that I'm disabled, and that has changed how I view spirituality in the form of, strangely enough, accessibility. And it's kind of the same with being queer, because in most of the spiritual practices that I do, it's very binary. A lot of people are like, well, there's the god and the goddess, there's the masculine and the feminine. And I'm sitting here going, my pronouns are they, them, and I meh, no place for me here. Um, and so that's definitely changed, made certain things more difficult in practicing, especially with other people. Because I've had spiritual people. This happened on a podcast before we hit record. Not on my podcast. I'd like to be clear, followers. Not on my podcast. No, no, no. I was a guest on someone else's podcast, and they kept misgendering me. And I said, hey, my pronouns are they, them. You gotta put a little bit of effort into that. It if you're having me on your show, please respect that. And this human jumped into this lecture about biology and science, and how true spirituality and the divine is masculine and feminine, nothing else. And so, to honor her spirituality, she will be using the binary. And I cannot have any opinions about that, because that will be stifling her spiritual path, and that's a sign of hate. And I was like, what? I had nothing else to say besides that. I was like, all right. So for me, those are demographics that I came across a lot, that shaped, just gave me a different viewpoint. It's like, what else is there besides the masculine and feminine? And how can we both be the same? And so I viewed it as like an internal thing. Like, we
mhm.
balance the masculine and feminine inside all of us. Um, so those are two demographics that, like, have nothing to do with family or heritage, that have contributed to my spiritual practices.
Wow. Well, first, I'm really sorry you had that experience. That sounds, we'll talk about that after. But that sounds awful. Sorry about that. For me, I I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what other demographics have really contributed. I spent quite a bit of time, about 15 years, immersed studying Kabbalah, but
Mhm.
that is a spiritual group. So uh,
I feel like your past lives are super ingrained into your spiritual identity. So I feel like that would, like, I know it's not a demographic, but I feel like that's helped shape you so much in the richness of your journey, and the complexity of what you're able to offer people has to do with the vastness of your past life. So, like, i- if I'm looking at you, that's one that I would think of. It's like, oh, but you have this wealth of knowledge, not just from this life, but from past lives. And I feel like that's really contributed to your understanding, but also your patience within your spiritual journey and helping others.
I would definitely agree. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of it as a demographic, but absolutely, because it's really my experiences in this life and in past lives that have really shaped everything that is part of my practice, you know, which goes back to the embodiment piece that I said, you know, it's I can't fathom the idea, even though it happens all the time, of bringing something into my practice and then teaching it, or using a particular tool to help others that I haven't myself been changed by,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense, you know. And I'm very eclectic in the things that I use, but it's at this point in my life, it's mostly energy work. You know, it's my connection to source. I have no problem. There's so many different words and labels that people use for that. I have no problem with any of them. God, goddess,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever. It is, to me, it's just source and it's love. And yeah, I think I went off on a little tangent, but
That's right.
I'm
We are big on tangents here. I think now I'm not sure if either of us, well, it's a demographic, and I don't know how to say this. I'm gonna butcher this because my brain is not working apparently. Wealth, money, income is a demographic. Someone below the poverty line will have a very different spiritual experience than someone who makes six figures or a multimillionaire. And that is not to say either one has a more rich or poorer or better experience. But let's be honest, like if you live below the poverty line and you're worried about food, you are not setting up an altar with expensive healing stones and figuring out what kind of wand and athame and everything you want. No, you're sitting there going, table salt's fine. I've been there. I've been super poor in my life. And so it does change. And then when you have money, it's like, oh yes, I will buy that herb bundle.
Mm-hmm.
$29.99. I get that. And you're like excited. And so I feel like that's something that shapes people's experiences too, that the resourcefulness. If someone, want to be clear, this is not an outdoorsy complexion. This is not a roughing it kind of experience. This is a does not see daylight kind of person. I have so many friends who and colleagues who hike and are nature and camp, spend nighttime outside. Bless them, bless them. It is their path. I honor it. I am not yucking your yum, but it very much is not my fucking yum. And but they get to go and like they'll find the coolest rock. They'll find the pine cone from God. They will, and
That's
it's amazing.
me. I love it. Keep going.
I better find gravel in the middle of Minneapolis. That's the rock I'm finding if it's not in a metaphysical store. I'm finding something that I kicked down the road on the way to the gas station. That's it. Like, but that affects people's spiritual journey. It helps shape them, you know, what kind of income they have, and also like their proclivity to the outdoors will make it so much different. Like I have several people in my life, and I'm jealous, not jealous enough to change it, let's be clear, who went on throughout several years. So this wasn't like one big trip and everyone went. Over several years, I had a bunch of different friends who went up to rural Canada that is 5 hours away from a hospital, one of which by boat over rapids. Like out in the middle of a lake in Canada, there's this little island and they all set up tents. And then they went went hiking on another island where they had to like hike up, not a mountain, but big old hill. Like it was a day trip. And all of them got to take rocks and like spell their names or like a word like love, peace, Stephanie, whatever, with the rocks. And I'm like, oh my, that is amazing. I would love to have that spiritual journey. DoorDash, don't go there, do it. I'm good. I love that for you guys though. So it's they have this beautiful rich experience and I'm a little jealous, but it's I won't do it. You know, I'm um but that shaped them. That was an experience that they could have because they were able to do that and it was beautiful. So I think there are just I don't want to say weird, but these things that we don't think about that shape our spirituality, whether they have something to do with spirituality or not. Like your money does not make you more psychic or less psychic. Your physical ability does not make you closer to God. The fact that you can hike a mountain does not make you more blessed than me. However, they do shape your spiritual experience. And I think that's so people never look at that. People rarely look at that, in my opinion, because it's always like, well, how psychic are you? Or what is your religious belief? Or anything, what modalities are you trained in? And it's like, where can you find a pine cone? Where can you bless? Like, all of it matters. All of it's important. All of it shapes you. And I feel like that's lost a lot in the discussion of it.
I think that what a lot of times people don't realize, in my experience, especially when they are new to spirituality, but it's not limited to new folks in spirituality because I've definitely experienced this from seasoned folks, is that they want to apply, and it's a very human thing, it's understandable, but they want to apply the way that the secular world or the ways in which we have all been programmed away from our nature in society and in culture. And they want to apply those things to spirituality, to spirit, to the ways in which they commune with their soul. That shit does not work. That is not the way that the soul communicates, the way that the soul expresses itself is not the way that industrialization and society has been set up. Those things have been set up for efficiency and productivity and capitalism. And I'm not against making money. I actually really enjoy money. I like money. So I'm not against it. But the soul is not concerned with those things. And so what I find a lot of times is that people try to fit their spirituality in a box and they try to make it look a certain way, or they try to make it look the way that they see other people, and I'm not someone, like you were saying earlier, that you love ritual, you love that something that is coming. I'm not like that. But there is nothing wrong with your way or my way. In fact, I know the importance of ritual, but I don't engage with it often. I leave it to very important things or when I'm really called to ceremony. And there was a time when I was apprenticing with a shaman. This was about 7 years ago. Now, there's a lot of ritual involved in certain shamanic practices. And I realized that I did not want my life to look like this. While it was a beautiful practice, I didn't want to be in ritual and ceremony every day. It's not me. It's not the way that I express my spirituality. I save those things for very specific times. And I found a way to express that divinity or express those that devotion, because my path is really devotional. It's really it's for me, one of the biggest things about my spirituality is expanding my heart and what that means. And I don't mean in an airy fairy kind of love that everyone thinks, it's can I have compassion for the person that is actively harming people and not bypassing what they're doing, but to see them in from the eyes of source, and that is not an easy thing.
No.
And so for me, the way that I express ceremony is through everyday actions like that. I don't like taking time away, because when I commit to a ceremony, it's a big deal. There's cleansing, there's this, there's that, there's setting it up, and that's a lot for every day or even weekly. you know. And so I really encourage people to find their own way, the way that their soul wants to express itself. And what gets in the way of that is that we think that things need to look a certain way. We think that what is trendy and cool is what is actually what our soul, and it's two very different things. And what is aligned for you is different for me. And I think that that is one of the most important things. I will hardly ever say that there is one thing that everyone has to do. There's very few things. One of them is really developing your intuition and learning how to connect with your soul, because that will not guide you in the wrong way. And the other is to make room for other people, whatever that is, because we're all different. And the thing is that the more we try to lump everyone together into groups, and I can understand because the mind wants efficiency, but that's not what the soul is interested in again. And so it's like, the more we make room within ourselves for other people and their differences, the more we actually make room to hear our own soul, because our own soul is oftentimes going to guide us down a path that doesn't make logical sense, the way that we have been taught to see and process information. And so I just went off on another little tangent.
That is okay, but you bring up a good point. Like, everyone's experience is going to be different. And when you try to fit the square peg in the round hole, it's not only frustrating, but it's incredibly like painful and invalidating to try and do that. And so whatever it is, it should be yours. And I love everyone's ness. Like, when I think of nuns and the rigorous routine that they have, that is beautiful for them.
Absolutely.
I could not do that. I have friends who part of their spiritual practice is every morning giving themselves a 40-minute reading to see how their day is going to go. That's too much for me. That is like, I love ritual and ceremony. I kind of feel like you do. It's when I do it, it's very ritualistic. It's very done. But like, my daily practice is not strict or structured. It's more like, what do I need? Deep breaths. Okay, honor your body. Take deep breaths. Intuitive eating, that type of thing. Like, yes, awesome. And it's not, you're right, one isn't better than the other. And I feel like that's where a lot of people get hung up. It's like, but it has to be this way because some influencer on TikTok said it had to be this way. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's whatever works. And if that works for you, if you followed that TikToker's example, great. But if not, like, find your own way. Some of the weirdest stuff. Okay, so here's one of the weirdest things about my spiritual practice. So most people get distracted, right? And we have worry thoughts, and then we're taught how to get rid of them. Visualize it floating on a cloud. Take a deep breath and wipe off the dry erase board. I've tried everything. You want to know what it is? Do you know what the Yule cat is? The Yule cat is a European myth of a cat bigger than a house who, during Yule, during the winter solstice, if the children did not contribute to the family and do their chores enough, the cat would eat them.
Oh.
Now, this has nothing to do with self-care, and yet the only thing that helps me get rid of worry thoughts is picturing a giant cat with murder mitts whacking the thoughts out of my head. And every time it works and they're gone, I honor the cat. And so, like, that works for me. It means fuck all to anyone else. But I'm like, find the weird that works for you, and then don't question it. Don't be like, but that's not what the Yule cat is meant for. I don't care. it worked and I'm happy. Like, find it that works for you in your own divinity. And
Right.
this idea that your divinity is going to look like anyone else's is just, it weirds me out so much. And that's one of the things that I have a problem with about people who teach courses and classes. And I've had so many students, like literally dozens, almost hundreds of students tell me, well, I came to your class and you're telling me that I'm not doing it wrong. I'm like, no, don't hurt yourself or anybody else and you're fine. But this teacher that I spent $3,000 on a course said this is the only way to do it. What's her phone number? I'd love to talk to her, because teaching that there is only one way to do anything without honoring your family, your heritage, your culture, your own learned experiences, your past lives, your physical abilities, your mental abilities. Why? Because I 100% guarantee that you are amazing and talented and so wonderfully gifted at what you do. I would hate my life if I did your practice.
Right.
And vice versa. You would look at mine and go, giant cat living in your head to swat things. That's adorable, you cartoon character, but you are illogical wingnut. Yes, I am, by the way. But it's like, no, they're not meant to be. We're meant to thrive as who we are. And so that's something that I get really passionate about, that it's like, no, do it your way. I am here to like give you examples. I am here to give you guidance. I am here to support. I am in no way here to tell someone how to do it. Ever. I never want to tell someone how to use their intuition. If your intuition tells you what socks to wear, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. So what are any parting thoughts or comments about the different backgrounds that we have and how they shape our spiritual experiences?
I feel it all comes down to really knowing yourself and having that self-awareness. Because like you were saying, there's so much that goes into us. Past lives, different heritages that meld together, the experiences that we have in any adopted culture, and wherever we're living, there's always, everything is influencing us. But the more that we really know ourselves, the more that we are aware of who we are, of what our own energy feels like, I feel like, and we allow ourselves to be informed by that. Our decisions come from that place. And everything would be in when I say integrity right now, I mean from like coming from your source, and we're not depending on what someone else is doing, what other groups are doing, and it doesn't make what they're doing wrong, but is it right for you? And I feel like it's really hard to know if something is right for you if you're not in touch with yourself. And so a lot of times I find that people want to skip over like these basic things and getting into like the real sexy stuff and spirituality, and the crystal. And I love crystals. I live in a crystal shop basically, but spirituality is not about that. Like if you don't know who you are, then everything else is just built on quicksand. And I really do wish more people really understood that.
Yes,
And brought it into practice.
I fully agree. That is an amazing note to end on. Thank you so much for coming. So for people who would want to get in touch with you, maybe get a session with you, what is the best way to contact you? Social media, website, how would you like people to reach out to you?
Either email or they can DM me on Instagram.
What's your handle, please?
Soul Alchemy, and alchemy is M-I-E, not Y-I-E.
Not that. See? Nice little sassy flair. Sassy flair. We like sassy flair here.
I like I's more than Y's. That's why my name was with an I. I know, it's a little.
I can feel that. I like Y's. I like a good tail.
Oh.
I like a good whoop. Like, and I'm sure it comes from, and this is side tangent, lemurs and spider monkeys. I like a good tail.
They're cute.
That's what I got. That's the like, I don't think I could ever spell my name Lili. Like, one, I think people call me Lily a lot, but the why, it's like just a little monkey tail. Just a little monkey tail. Oh my God, I am the biggest dork. Thank you so much for joining us. I have loved this conversation. It is great to talk about these hard topics and to bring light to them and to have it be a serious and respectful conversation to everybody, not just our demographics, not just our backgrounds and our heritage, but to everyone's, and be able to like actually say that and speak in a room full of people. Metaphorically, I get that we're on the internet and everything. So thank you so much, Gabby Morales, for coming, for doing this, for taking time. For everyone watching, thank you so much. Remember to like, share, and follow if you want to see more, and comment any of your questions. We are happy to answer them. Go forth, have a magical day, be the hero of your own story. And again, thank you, Gabby. Bye.
Thank you so much. This was great.